Hello, everybody. It's our bi-monthly Barn Box chat, and my name is Ann Hansen. I'm the designer behind Knit Spot Patterns and the kind of creative director of Bare Naked Wools, meaning that I design and choose our yarns and fibers that we have custom spun for us. And so this month, we did something a little different. Once in a while, you're going to get a dyed yarn from someone who is a favorite, who works with fibers that we love, and or who has a special technique to share with people that's interesting to knit with. And this month is Brook Farm. The dyer is Lisa Westra. She is the farm manager and dyer behind the Brook yarn products. And one of her Lisa is a biochemist by education, and she grew up in farming, and she has a farm. She has a working education farm. So she raises sheep. She has a small spinning mill on her property now, so she spins her own. She actually produces her own yarn. She used to work with a mill that was close by, but now she works on her own property. She produces everything now. And her own sheep are Teeswater crosses, and then she sources wool. I think she does have a couple of border Leicesters, and she has a couple of other types of sheep, but the Teeswater are her kind of main flock. Excuse me. So she produces specialty wools that are untreated, just like we do. She doesn't really work with superwash, except for she may do some superwash bases for her very commercial clients that want that. But the yarn that we chose, so we've had her BFL in the past, her Blue Face Leicester yarn. We've had a merino yarn from her. We've had a blend that included lyocell, which is sea cell, or made from, I believe it's made from seaweed and things like that. And that yarn was the original yarn that I designed the sea shawl with. We used it in a green colorway at that time. And of course she has the Corriedale base that she works with. So her technique involves, instead of dyeing the yarn after it's spun, she applies the dye to the roving, the cleaned wool, which has been kind of loosely worked into a rope before it goes onto the spinning machine. So she dyes the roving in patterns, stripe patterns, and kind of allows the dye to run a little bit. Different fibers accept dye differently and distribute dye differently along the fiber length. So the fiber base is fairly important. And then she drafts it and spins it. So the colors, while they are the same, throughout the product, the machines manipulate and distribute the color differently throughout the skeins. So as the dyed wool is spun, the colors will come together and apart in different ways. So while each skein has the same dye colors, they combine and recombine in completely random ways in the spinning, producing further colors as they blend with each other. So it's in a 2-ply yarn, you may get like a purple and a blue coming together to form a more kind of periwinkle or a shade of purple to the eye. So parts of your skein are going to be barber poled with a 2-color blend, and Parts of your skeins are going to be almost solid, but all of the colors will graduate one to the other in a very subtle graduated gradient, depending on how large a piece you are knitting. So if you're knitting a very wide piece, the gradient will progress very quickly, and your stripes or your bands of color will be narrow. And if you're knitting a piece of a smaller size or smaller circumference, your gradient bands are going to be wider. And I just love working with her yarn. I'm not I don't know how to say this, maybe correctly, but I've gotten away from working with a lot of dyed yarns in the last few years because we produce our own yarns and because I'm so kind of enamored with them. But I do love working with Lisa's colors just because they're so entertaining and just so beautiful. She has a real eye for creating color combinations, and she's incredibly talented at interpreting ideas about colorways that we give her, for a project. So most of the time when we engage Lisa to dye a yarn for us, we are working on a specific project with a kind of specific concept. And so we ask her, we kind of describe what we're going to do and ask her to come up with a colorway that represents the concept. In the past, we've done the sea is a good example. We wanted kind of a green, misty, watery colorway, and we got exactly what we wanted. We did want greens and just pale blues in it and whites, and she just did a really lovely job with that. Another time we were for our pairings club, which was a club that involved yarn and recipes, we were working with sweet corn in one of the installments, and she dyed a beautiful bright green and yellow colorway for us that really looked just like the colors of sweet corn with the husk still on. It was just really beautiful. And of course, for our yarn discovery tour projects, her yarns are our favorite with our local customers. And each year for the past few years, I've designed shawls for our yarn discovery tour with her yarn. The favorite being our Sugar Maples colorway, which just year after year is a popular pick for us to bring to you. So look, you can look for that in the fall. We have some in our shop right now, actually. And for this colorway, my inspiration was I wanted something, because it was going to be January, I wanted something that was frosty and with a kind of leaning toward purples, but I don't like really in-your-face purples. So I asked for a more gray purple shade, and I got looking on the internet. I like to create a little mood board where I find photographs that are inspirational, that show the colorway, some kind of object or plant with the colorway, but also photos that relay some kind of concept along with it. It might be something organic, it might be a pattern, it might be something geometric or something mathematical. I try to pick pictures that will relay my concept. And I came across photos of gray poppies. If you're not familiar with gray poppies, go ahead and Google them. They're gorgeous. And when you Google them, click on the images tab so that it'll come up with a whole page full of images of gray poppies. And I found many photographs to send her as inspiration. And one of the things that, in addition, that I just loved about the gray poppies, they're not a large family within the poppy what do I want to say, genus or, you know, series, but so it's a fairly small family of poppy varieties, and they're all named with love and marriage names. Like I think one is called fiance and one is called engagement, maybe, you know, there are names like that. So so that's how we picked our color name French Kiss, because it kind of went along with that romantic, but in a sassy way, that romantic naming convention. And one of the things when I was looking at the photos of the gray poppies, one of the things I really loved about the photos was that they showed, there were many that showed the poppies with kind of a frosty or misty backgrounds, or even the petals of the flowers themselves have a kind of dusky quality, like almost as if they've been showered with dust or sparkles or something. So they definitely relay that frosty, wintry, midwinter, you know, gray purple sky that I wanted. But many of the photographs also showed some rich color contrast that I was very intrigued with. So one of my inspiration photos had like a rich cocoa brown organic material sprinkled in with the poppies. You know, stems and pods and leaves from other plants were mixed in. Or they were laid, there was another photo that I had that was laid on white velvet, probably as a representation for a bride, or, you know, some kind of formal use of the flowers. And that got me thinking about ways to use this colorway with a solid color, you know, in a color work piece. So going back to our colors and the yarn, is anybody here, if you don't want to be spoiled, then I'm going to show the yarn now. So if you haven't received your yarn and you don't want to be spoiled, you might want to cover up your camera. But if you have looked up the gray poppies, this is the colorway of the yarn. You can see here how like this skein in particular has beautiful shades from those gray poppies. And you can also see how each skein can be really different. Some of these skeins have a bunch of blue in them, and some of our skeins have a lot of blue. And then some skeins, like this one, has hardly any, or the blue is really mixed in more evenly throughout the skein. So that's where the entropy name kind of comes in. And here's one with really dark and really light contrasts in it, which is interesting. My skein had that, but the gray poppies neck warmer that I knit with it didn't use enough yarn to get to the dark purple that was in my skein. So that can happen too. Anyway, I pulled some skeins out so that I could also pull some skeins that would be possible pairings with this yarn. So I, let's see, I knit my neck warmer with the white, from the Fin Dandy 3-ply line. And of course, white goes with everything, but it doesn't complement everything necessarily. And I did really like it with this. One of the things I love about the entropy yarn is kind of antithetical to the way most knitters might think. So most knitters might think, I want a lot of contrast. And with the entropy yarn, you can get lots of contrast in some parts of the skein, but in other parts of the skein, the entropy is going to fade almost to white. and it's going to recede back into the fabric a little more, no matter what color you pick, no matter what shade of yarn you pick to go with it. One end of the spectrum or the other is going to fade back into the background of your piece. And that's actually a feature of the entropy yarn that I love, is that the colors go into the fabric and come out of the fabric to your eye. And so, you know, if you're like naturally averse to a low contrast feature, I'm kind of begging you to give it a chance in this project. And a neck warmer, a longer piece, like a longer neck warmer, is a good palette or a good canvas to do that on, because it really does give you the length to go through several color grades before you end it. So that's the purple with the white. And then, of course, another natural pairing might be the gray, like the Daybreak from our Better Breakfast lines. And let me get one of the other. So here's the gray with like a darker, richer version of the entropy. You can see how nicely that sets off. And then here it is with the lighter. This is a lighter skein. It looks a little dark on my camera, but it has a lot of light shades in it. And then the other color family I really liked with this purple is brown. And of course, my favorite brown was the brown from the Fin Dandy line, which sold out immediately. But you can see how a nice rich brown also sets off that purple, and it actually brings a little bit of the redness of the purple out in it. This brown is the mocha from our Better Breakfast line. So if you're thinking of pairing colors with this yarn, you don't at all need to stick to the color pairing that I chose for my sample. But if you enjoy browns or grays, I encourage you to go ahead and give it a whirl. And you might even have some examples in your stash that, at least to swatch with, that you could play with to pin down your favorite color pairing. So of course you can use this yarn by itself. The Sea shawl is a really good example of that. And then you can pair it with a solid yarn, or even another, completely different gradient for some color work projects. Slip stitch projects, stranded knitting are all, nice projects to approach with this. And of course the mosaic knitting. So when I was getting ready to, oops, just a second. My yarn is taking a tumble over there. So when I was getting ready to design with this, I was, fairly sure. Oh, okay, somebody needs the brown. Somebody wants me to show what, Elizabeth? Can you unmute, Elizabeth? Oh, hang on.
I'm unmuted. Hang on. Click
Yeah,
button.
I think it's going to be because there's so many pages of people. I can't talk and read. I think it's going to be easier if you just ask the questions from people. Would that be okay?
Yes, that would be fine. I've been trying.
Okay.
I have been answering a couple questions.
Okay.
Let's see here. Get that back over there.
So you wanted the brown with what? One of the more turquoise?
I think because there are so many people,
Uh-huh.
They're going to have to send me a chat, because with 55 people, there are like 2 or 3 screens of participants. And so I won't see the raised hand. So if you have a question, send it to me in a chat, and then I will ask it of Anne. Is that okay?
Elizabeth, I think the raised hands will come to the front of the row.
Oh, so they will?
See them.
Okay, that would work. Thanks.
Somebody wanted to see the brown yarn with something. But I didn't catch
With the teal.
the teal. You mean like this? Like that?
Yes, Anne, thank you.
Oh, hi, Robin. That was you.
Of course, brown. You knew it would have to be me. Yeah,
And
because
then, here's
the
another
teal.
one that has some more like blue. This is a very dark one that has blue in it.
Mhm.
That's really pretty. I could just sit and like look through the bin of yarn all day and be like, oh, that one's pretty. Okay. So anybody else have a question? I'm going to pause for questions now before I get into like how I designed it or why I picked what I did.
I have a question, Anne, about the gray poppies pattern.
Uh-huh.
I'm really intrigued. I've already ordered my Fin Dandy white.
Oh, good.
I'm very excited. I want to make it for a friend for a Christmas gift next year. And I'm intrigued. In the first photo in your pattern, you have the cowl almost pulled up over your head. So I love the dual feature of neck warming and head warming. And
Uh-huh.
sizing is not my strength. So when I saw the two choices of 24-inch circumference and 60-inch circumference, that's a huge difference. What do you recommend and what's the thinking on the 60-inch circumference?
The longer one would be a cowl that would hang down, would be more like a scarf.
Yes.
So, and then you could loop it a couple of times around your
Yes.
neck.
Yes.
So, and it's not as deep. It's only, I can't remember offhand. It's 8 or 9 inches deep.
Yes.
Is that right? So, and really, you can make either of these things as tall or short as you want to. And the pattern also includes a note that you can add one repeat of the pattern if you want to make the, to make it, you can add or subtract 1 or 2 repeats of the pattern to make it less long or, wider. So the idea behind the two sizes was to give two very different kind of interpretations of the cowl. Some people really like those long cowls and they like to loop them up.
Yes.
Or let them, or then when they get warm, then they can unwind them and let it just hang from their neck like a scarf.
Yes.
And you can also even do a French pull or you can knot it. So some people really like the versatility of those cowls. And then the more, I call this more like a neck warmer, where it's really just, it's 24 inches, which is pretty a good size to go over just about any woman's head.
Oh, that would go up over your head?
Yeah. Well, you can wear it either way. I mean, you can pull it all the way down and scrunch it
Yes.
up.
Yes.
Or, if you're out in the wind, you could pull it up like a snood and wear it,
That's
like this.
exactly what I wanted to do, and I didn't
Yeah.
know if it had enough flexibility.
Yeah, you have enough yardage, especially if you get the white or a brown to go with it. You can make I want to say you could probably make 2 of them with that much yarn. But so this is 12 inches deep and you can add another couple inches if you want to. There's no real limit. The repeats are fairly short. They're about 3/4 of an inch or an inch. And so you can, for me, it was about the colors. Like, oh, I really want to knit to that color.
Oh, it's absolutely stunning. My question is more with the circumference, not so much the height.
Yeah.
So I saw in the pattern, you could add 18 stitches and that would give you 3.5 more inches in circumference.
It will, but it will also be baggier if you do that. Now, but if you think your friend needs a little more room, a few more inches, you could add it. And for me, this is plenty big enough and it'll go up over my head.
Yeah, she's about your size. I think I'll go with the 24 as a loose knitter.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you,
Now
Ann.
now if you do knit loose, you might want to be sure to do it a gauge swatch, because you don't want to be too loose with this mosaic work, because it will your stitch definition is fairly important to keep the pattern kind of crisp and visible.
Yes,
So
good suggestion. Thank you.
you're welcome. Who's next?
I don't know. I do not see any other questions right now.
Okay.
Pam did ask a question, and she asked how it would look with the sea glass, but I'm not sure if she meant the current Feederbrook color or the brown. I think brown would look great with seagrass, but I don't know.
Yeah. I yeah. You mean how would this design look with the sea glass color? I think it would be gorgeous. It would look more like leaves instead of flowers, maybe. It really is a fairly abstract pattern, but it has something of an organic, I think our brains give it the organic quality that I see in it. But, it could just be like stair steps or arrows, I think the green would be really pretty. Any of the entropy colors would be really pretty. To me, any of the entropy shades are pretty much always going to remind me of things from nature. So if you use a different colorway, you're just bringing the pattern into a different season. This is kind of frosty and early spring and winter colors, and a bright green might be more summery, and one of the brown orange mixes might make it more like fall. And so to me, her colorways are more seasonal than anything else. So when I was getting ready to design this, I had recently designed a shawl. In the fall, I designed a shawl with her yarn that was a mosaic stitch, but it was a stockinette based mosaic stitch with a larger, just a larger motif. And I really enjoyed knitting with it. I loved mixing it with our yarn, and I loved the whole mosaic.
Sorry, this is the woman whose yarn I just got.
For the
Doing
hypnotic.
it.
Oh, did someone have a question there, or?
No, Linda, I'm going to mute you for just a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, anyway, and I just really enjoyed the process, and I thought that one of the things with Barn Box, with the designs for Barn Box, is that we try to choose designs that are appealing in the skill level to all skill levels. So we do have a number of beginners or people who knit only occasionally and aren't really into technique. And then we have people who are very experienced who like to bounce around with technique and try different yarns with different techniques. So stranded knitting doesn't appeal to everyone, and everyone isn't experienced at it. So that's a little bit of a no for me in terms of Barn Box. But slip stitch knitting and mosaic knitting will give you similar results, but they are much more easy to execute and are much more embraceable. If you haven't ever worked with a slip stitch pattern or a mosaic pattern, this might be a great project for you to start with, because it's knit in the round. You'll be looking at the front facing side of the fabric the whole time. You'll only read the chart in one direction all the time, because you'll be working in the round. And so it should be fairly not too difficult to learn a new technique if you're not familiar with this. And it really just it's a garter stitch based pattern, and it just requires being able to slip stitches from one needle to the other and working knit and purl. That's it. It's super easy. Now, mosaics can be worked both in garter stitch and in stockinette stitch. So more experienced people who might want to try knitting this exact same design instead of in garter stitch, to do every round in plain stockinette instead, and try that just to see how it changes it. And you can even try that out in a swatch if you want to try it ahead of time. I kind of liked it in the garter stitch better. Well, obviously I liked it better because that's what I went with. But I often swatch in many different ways just to be sure I'm not missing out on something I might really like. So while my brain might initially discount the stockinette version, I make myself swatch anyway, just to be sure that I'm not cheating myself out of something. So, but I like to swatch. And I'm just really happy with the way it came out. I feel like this pattern distributes the colors in my skein really beautifully. The kind of angled shape of the overall motif leads your eye in different directions so that you don't see as readily the bands as they change color. You don't really see them as stripes as much as just floating segues between the colors. And I think that's partially due to the texture and the angle of the stitch pattern. And then our other choices for patterns were really based on past experience with using Lisa's yarn in different things.
And
Yes.
Linda Cleveland has a question. She said,
Okay.
is it important to swatch in the round for the gray poppies pattern?
You could swatch flat if you want to. Of course, you'll have to read the chart in the other direction. So you'll have to read the odd number rows from right to left and the even number rows from left to right to do that. But I usually swatch flat. I don't often swatch in the round. It's just easier for me to do it flat. Anybody else have a question? Okay. Oh, I have our sample.
I have one.
Uh-huh.
So the new yarn that came in kind of the teal, blue, purpley colors, would sea glass go well with that?
Oh, you mean as the second color?
Yes.
How do they look next to each other?
That's my question.
What you mean I'm a little confused. You mean the green gradient from several years ago?
No. One of the colorways where it's kind of the bluish. I'm just not sure it would go with.
Are you talking about the green seagrass yarn?
Yes.
Or sea glass yarn to go with
Yes.
bluish, purplish?
Yes.
And you want to know if it will go with this blue purple?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't have any here. The sea glass is from several years ago, so mine is gone.
Okay.
But you're asking if you could pair them up?
Yes.
I'm sure you could pair them up in some project or other. I would swatch with it before I launched on something like that. I don't think they'd pair well in the gray poppies because the stitch pattern is so delicate that I think the competing colors would erase the formation of the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
I always thought, combining two variegated yarns, if you're doing color work, they will compete with each other. And
They will. and you would have to be careful to keep the way that color works is that there's a foreground and a background. And for the most part, the foreground color should stand up off from the background color. With the entropy yarn, as I explained earlier, foreground and background sometimes come very close. And you know, part of how I choose a stitch pattern takes that into consideration. So if you're using the green and the purple together, one of them would be your background and one of them would be your foreground. And you would have to make sure that not only is one of them the background in the color contrast, but also in the depth contrast. So if I was going to mix a green gradient with a purple gradient, I would want the purple gradient to be fairly close in tones and dark. And I would want the green gradient to be very light and also close in tones, like in the lightness of it, so that the purple could still stand apart from the green. And hopefully I haven't lost, 40 of you in that discussion, but
Mary,
but you might be able to do something in a striping pattern, like a Fibonacci stripes or something like that with the green and the purple. You might be able to do something like that successfully.
I have two questions. One for
Okay.
Mary Shue. Do you have a coordinating mitten or fingerless mitt pattern for gray poppies? That's the first one.
Not at this time. It's possible that we'll come up with something, but it's not on my to-do list at this time.
Okay. Andrea Sandal has a question. Can you identify a gray yarn, both color and type, again for the gray poppies neck warmer? I know that you already made suggestions, but I didn't catch the answer. Thanks.
Oh, okay. The one that I pulled out before, when I went through our shop, the Better Breakfast fingering in Daybreak is a nice contrast. It's light enough to kind of handle all the shades in the purple skein. The gray, the wolf gray that we have in the Fin Dandy might be a nice choice. We have extremely few of those left, but it's also a little browner, and when you put it next to the purple, it doesn't quite, for me, it doesn't quite hit the mark. The Daybreak is a silvery gray, and that looks really nice with it.
Here's the wolf and Fin Dandy. I agree with you. The silver that you've got there looks so much better. Because mine is wound.
Yeah, put your purple yarn next to it.
Well,
It just makes the wolf look browner.
Yes.
It's not bad. There's nothing wrong with it. And the other thing you might try, we don't have any left, but the Fin 2-ply from the last shipment might look really nice with the purple.
Ooh.
And it would be also kind of cool because it's a little bit fuzzy. So that might provide a nice contrast as well.
That's exactly what I'm doing, Anne.
You know what?
I
That
don't know
was
if you can see.
Oh, let's see.
Oh, there's too much. Hold on. There.
Pull it back a little bit from the you're
Yeah, there's too much sun here.
hang on. I'm going to have to mute someone who is coming through too loud. Okay. Here is my Fin Dandy 2-ply. And here is my skein. So you are right. This
yeah.
Fin Dandy 2-ply looks wonderful with this.
It does. It does.
Yeah. So if you haven't used that yet, that's another option.
My yarn is wound. I've already wound it into my squishy ball. So yeah.
And then let me think if there's, the other option is the deco, the modern deco sport, would be a nice contrast, like in the chrome color or the white. And not what's nice about that is it not only contrasts in color, but there's a contrast in the, it's a shinier yarn and a more sleek yarn. And so you'll get that texture contrast between the two yarns as well. So that's a nice option too. We do have the Fin Dandy, or the Fin Dandy 2-ply in white. We still have some of that. And so I did pull that too. It's a little bit creamier than the 3-ply one. Just a little bit more yellow to it. Okay. Anybody else? Questions?
Someone, I think her name is Nina, says my Fin Dandy in fog seems too brown for my skein of entropy.
Mm-hmm.
It was my first thought, but I went with a white Cormo instead.
Uh-huh. And that's really just, it's totally a matter of taste. I think everybody's Fin Dandy 2-ply was the same, but your purple might be different, and that may lend it a browner look too. So if your purple has a little more blue in it, it can brighten up the gray a little bit too.
And then Jika, I'm sorry if I trash your name. I'm terrible at names and most everything else. Gika Rector says, is it okay to mix weights of yarn in this gray poppies pattern?
That's the other great thing about these slip stitch and mosaic patterns, because the yarn is mixing so evenly. So the two yarns are being used more or less evenly throughout the piece. It's a great chance to mix weights. I wouldn't mix two weights that were very far apart, but you could mix where this Corriedale really leans toward being on the fingering side of sport. You could use a heavier sport weight or a light DK weight yarn as well, or like I said before, a fingering weight with the entropy yarn. And you may need to adjust your needle size when you do that. So you may find that you have to go down or up a needle size to accommodate the different weight yarn.
Cynthia DeSoy says, I was thinking of using some leftover Jenny Sport.
Oh, Ginny Sport is perfect. I think of the Ginny Sport as a real equivalent to the new Fin Dandy 3-ply. So to me, it feels very similar. The hand is very similar. It does a lot of the same things and knits to the same gauges as our Ginny Sport that we can't make anymore. I saw somebody had a question about, I can't, just FYI, the questions do pop up, but I can't see
Go
it
away. Yeah.
past the first line.
Elizabeth Bowman says, do you have any pattern suggestions that don't involve a contrast yarn or a second skein? A pattern for the single skein only? I don't have my shipment yet. I'm doing
Oh,
single.
the C shawl has two sizes, and the one size uses just one skein. So that's one. And any of the little shawlettes in our collection, there are many, but bay leaf and lime comes to mind, and all of those have small and medium sizes that use just anywhere from 300 to 400 skeins of yards of yarn. And anything that's a little triangle shawl would be lovely, and a simple stitch pattern would be lovely in the entropy yarn, because the colors would gradually work their way up or down the shawl. And the kind of cool thing about knitting a triangle with it is that as the triangle grows, the color bands will become more narrow. So the distribution of the yarn changes as well.
I have a question on, I am knitting the petite C,
Uh-huh.
and I am getting quite proficient at the hem because it's
You've knit it 4 times.
yeah. twice on sea glass, and now I'm on my fourth time on this one, because I just can't get to it. But anyway, I want to be able to use all of the yarn. So how difficult is it? I know I'm not going to widen the, or I'm not going to lengthen the lace pattern. I'm going to knit the lace pattern per the chart. But then when I get up to the short rows, is there anything special I have to do
To,
to use up all the yarn? Like it, I mean, how many yards do we have in this? Is this 400 yards?
yes.
And I want to be, and I think, and I'm just above average on tight knitting. I knit just a little bit tighter. So I'm
Uh-huh.
going to have a bit of yarn left over, thinking.
I would, what does the pattern say the yardage is for the small size?
I think it's 375. Hang on.
Oh, okay. I thought it was 400.
Oh, well,
I
maybe
would,
it is, and I'm worrying about nothing. 375.
oh, okay. I would wait till you get there. But
Yeah.
another idea, what about doing like a pair of cuffs to match it? You know, maybe like the
Oh,
elm leaves or the moth kisses or huerga. I think that was actually one of the patterns, the huerga pattern with the wrist warmers.
mhm. That's a
I
good
think the
idea.
pattern in that might actually match the C hem.
Okay. What was the name of the pattern again?
Huerga, Juerga. It's one of the patterns on the barn box page, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, one of the suggested patterns.
All righty. Thanks.
I do have the shawl here as well. So let me see if I can.
Oh, it's
Mm,
So this was knit with skeins that were quite a bit different than my skein in the neck warmer. These had more blue and in some ways a lot more white too, and even some of that gray. And the odd colors that you see in these skeins, they come from where two kind of opposite colors come together, and so it forms a neutral that might look like a gray or a black.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and this is a fun, it's a wedge shawl, so you can wrap it. I like to always wrap my shawls bandit style with the point in the front, and that way the lace kind of goes over my shoulder a little bit, but it's a really beautiful, it has an intrinsic bend in it, just visually weights toward the lace. It's nice.
do you
And
know?
the small size is perfect for a scarf.
Do you know if Brook Farms is still making the sea glass colorway?
Well, I don't know. She might be using those dye shades, but I believe the yarn base was custom for us. So that lyocell yarn base the yarn base interacts with the colorway. So depending on what your fiber is, that's how the colors play out. So she may be using those dye colors on something, but it might not be as recognizable. It might not be recognizable as the same type of colorway because the fiber content is different. When you dye on lyocell fiber, it doesn't take dye in the same way, and so some of the subtlety and the paleness and the sea glassiness of that colorway is determined by the base, the yarn base.
Yeah, it almost has a translucence to it.
Yeah, and that's the sea cell at work, and we asked for that. We were wanting something that was very translucent looking, that filtered light really well. So anybody else have a question?
From Linda, if I buy another skein, how different will the skeins be in the large shawl? Thanks.
From what I can tell, the skeins blend one to the other really nicely. So this shawl is two skeins, And I don't know, I really can't tell where one begins and one ends. And I don't know if the person who knit it is present, but honestly, like, I can't tell. You can, we are perfectly happy for you to send a photograph of your skein, a nice photograph where we can really tell what the colors are, and we can try to match it as best we can. Just send that to the Jeeves mailbox and explain what you're wanting, and we can do our best to help you out.
And then Nina has a question. Do you have a sample of the fall between the branches shawl?
We do, but I'm at home and not in the shop, and that's where it is. It's over in the, oh, you mean in the purple? No, we don't. But we have a couple, we have a blue one. I know that's not really the answer you're looking for. I can pretty much tell you that it would be pretty. I think that would be gorgeous with the Jacob yarn. Oh my God, it'd be so pretty with the Jacob sport.
I do not have any more questions coming through unless unless I'm not seeing someone.
I also wanted to just back up a little bit into the last shipment. I know I said I do have like a whole written story about Finn ready to go. Well, we sold out our Finn in like 5 minutes. So it seemed kind of antithetical to put it up out there and then people not be able to come and get some. And so we are restocking our Finn Dandy 3-ply probably later in February, probably mid to late February. And when we get our shipment, then we'll roll out the kind of chapter text about it. And I really do apologize for that. It just took us by surprise how quickly it sold out. But we're getting more and it's going to be great. We're also getting more of the, we're also getting more of the 2-ply, and the 2-ply will be, I don't think it's a big secret to say, the 2-ply is going to be available in a larger range of shades. So
the 2-ply is very, very soft. Okay.
It's so interesting. There are 2 different mills and 2 different farm sources for the 2 yarns, but they're both beautiful. So
Right. Okay, Hika or Gika, I'm sorry about the name, has a question. I have a question about one of the scarf patterns. It called for 450 yards, but the skein has 400 yards. I can't remember what the name of the pattern is. Let's see if I can.
Is it hypotenuse or something else?
I'm wondering if it's hypotenuse. Let me look it up.
Well, and of course, just about, oh, go ahead.
Oh, my question was just, is there an easy stopping point? Like if I get to the end of the 400, is it going to be in the middle of a pattern, or, you know, is there like a repeat that I could stop with?
Probably. What pattern is it? The hypotenuse? Which pattern is it?
I'm looking it up now.
I think it's the hypotenuse. I was thinking parallelogram, so that must be it.
Yeah. So I would say wherever what you can do, this is what you can do. And don't forget that pattern was written for us, but you know, using a specific yarn, that 450 yards made the length called for in the pattern, but different yarns require different yardage quantities often. So your yarn may go further than that yarn did. So that's just one thing. And the other thing is, as you're knitting it, if you can, when you're at the beginning of a repeat, if you can weigh your skein and then weigh it at the end of the repeat, then you'll know how many grams each repeat takes, or how many ounces or parts of an ounce each repeat requires, so that you'll know, you'll have a pretty good idea of how many repeats you can get from your skein. And at the end, you'll know if you have enough left in your skein to knit like another repeat of the pattern. So when you're getting down to the end, you can keep weighing your yarn to figure out how far you can go. And just remember to keep a little bit for the top hem of that scarf. But any scarf can be stopped at the end, you know, at any stopping point wherever the pattern tells you. So if the pattern says to work a full repeat at the end, you'd want to end at that point. But if it's like 10 rows of a repeat, then you want to stop at that point. And usually there's a reason for the stopping point, but the total number of repeats can be more or less depending on your yarn supply or your taste in scarf length or whatever.
Thanks. That's what I needed to know.
Does that help? Sometimes it's not a good idea to ask me a question because I go on and on and on and on when I've already answered it.
No, it was useful information for that and for other projects.
Anybody else? Any other questions about anything else that you might want to know that I didn't cover? Or
actually, I'm coming in late. You may have already answered the new triangular scarf shawl that you did, which has kind of a feather and fan edge to go with the pretty barn box this month. Was that able to use just one ball of the barn box, or did you need to get multiples?
The pattern it has two sizes, and one size you can make with one skein, and the larger size, which is the one that's in the picture, you'll require two skeins for that.
Okay.
And if you go to the pattern listing in the website, you'll see there should be photos there of the smaller size shawl or scarf, shawlette, whatever you want to call it. I think they're mostly mannequin shots, but they're there to give you an idea of the size.
Jika asks, how do I find the yarn box patterns on the website? If you got your email, in your email, there's a button that says view the collection. And if you click on that, you will see the patterns, and those should link right to Ravelry. Does that help?
You know, I've gotten the pattern through the Bare Naked Wool website, and I'm still waiting to get it onto my Ravelry account.
Oh, you mean okay. Yeah, when you order the pattern, there's a notes section. And if you put in the notes section, please add to my Ravelry ID and put your Ravelry ID in there. They will put that in there. Every once in a while.
I did.
Okay. And then, but I think
did.
somebody else asked the question. Somebody else asked the question, how do I find the yarn box patterns on the website? Do you mean, how do you find them to set up your project? Or how do you find them just to look at them?
This is Geeka. I was trying to look at the patterns while we were talking and I couldn't find the email. So I wondered if there's a way to find it on the site without that button.
I think there's a category called collections.
Okay.
And Barn Box is always one of the collections.
Thanks. I'll try that.
I can actually go online and see too. I forgot I was sitting right in front of my computer this whole time. Let me see. All right. Where that? I don't know how you get, featured collections. Oh, on the main page of our website, there's a header called featured collections with 4 photographs underneath. And the one on the lower left says club, KALs, and events. And so I guess that's not really the collections I was thinking of.
That's if you want to purchase the collection.
Yeah, or just browse. I know Angel puts together all kinds of different collections of patterns for different things, you know, spring knits and I'm not sure.
I'll
not
ask
sure.
her. I'll ask her and find out. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe she can tag them with Barn Box so that people can search Barn Box Knit Spot or Barn Box B&K and
Mhm.
find them.
That
what
would be
she did.
great.
Okay.
All right. All right. Well, if there isn't any more questions or anything I can help you with, the next barn box we're pretty excited about. It's going to be another new thing.
Do you have any secret swatches you can show us?
I might. Okay, I do. Well, first of all, I on the design boards, I've got several sweaters coming out and some accessories. We've got all kinds of, you know, I've always got a ton of designing that's going on. But for Christmas, I knit David a very, it's kind of a plain saddle shoulder pullover with a pinstripe texture and just like a tiny bit fancier than the wild horses pattern that I made him last year in stockinette. So I wrote the pattern for that and the women's version and the V-neck and the cardigan. So it's going to have all the usual variations that are in all of my basic patterns. So it's men's and women's sizing separately and V-neck, crew neck, and cardigan options. And of course you can make a vest as well. So I swatched that. I knit it in the Kent DK yarn. I'm knitting a women's cardigan in the Stone Soup DK yarn. And I swatched with the Fin Dandy 3-ply. So I have a swatch in that, which is really nice. And also in Secret Yarn number 3. I just call it number 3 because that's how it's on my list. So Secret Yarn number 3 might be, you know, a barn box yarn. And anyway, so we've got those 2 sweaters coming out. I'm working on Robin's sweater. I call it Robin's sweater, which is a little bit fancier cardigan in the grays stitch pattern with cable details. And I've got a shawl and a scarf on the needles. So lots coming up. Oh, and I've got a set of circular yoke sweaters that will be published in By Hand Serial in late February. So there's a bunch of new stuff coming out. Lots of great yarn in the shop. New selections coming all the time. And you know, it's Valentine's Day in a couple weeks, so treat yourself.
Yeah.
All right.
I got
All
one,
right.
I got one more
Oh.
comment from
Okay.
Brenda S, I think. I can't
Uh-huh.
remember her name right now. Thank you so very much. I joined in February and I've loved each selection. I will stay in Barn Box as long as you are able to keep it going.
Oh, awesome.
I am in Colorado now and it is a
How's it
very
going?
knitworthy place to live.
All right, you guys, thank you for joining. This was really great. We'll keep it on Sundays from now on because we get so much more participation this way, and the sun is out. So until some other circumstance keeps us from doing it on Sunday, we'll be back in 2 months on Sunday. All right, take care. Bye-bye.